Hi, my name is Dee Dee Autry, and I am a health and wellness coach here in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And I'm pleased that you've joined us today for this episode of the Infinite Possibilities podcast. My goal in each episode is to provide you with inspiration, insights, and ideas that can help you personally unleash all the infinite possibilities in your life. On today's episode, I visit with Erin Roesch. Erin is a fitness coach. She's also ordained in the United Methodist Church. Erin has really embraced the work that she does as a fitness coach to be her model of ministry. She's married and has two beautiful little girls. And I came to know Erin through some mutual colleagues and by following her on Instagram. So, in this episode, you're going to hear some really what I would call golden nuggets of insight and wisdom from Erin. So, you might even want to grab a pen and paper because she really says some awesome stuff that really drives home the value of taking better care of ourselves. She really does help us embrace the journey that we're on to be intentional about the care for ourselves. And as I listen, I think she's pretty quotable, so you might want to write a few things down. So, why don't you tell folks a little bit about who you are and your background and kind of how you got into doing what you're doing?
Sure. So my name is Erin Roesch, and I am a health and fitness coach, just like Dee Dee. And that's how we connected over Instagram. And I view what I do as walking alongside women so they can live their best embodied life and do the things they love to do for and with the people that they love. And all of that kind of started um, when I was working in the nonprofit sector, which is kind of an interesting thing. I grew up just kind of your average American girl. I did a couple sports here and there. I wasn't a particularly fanatical, like gym rat kind of person, but I had watched my mother really struggle with nutrition and health and fitness, and all the women in my family. I don't know if the listeners can relate to this sort of like perpetual crash dieting,
Hmm.
fad dieting,
Hmm.
the I grew up in the era of like Jane Fonda and Richard Simmons were like my parents' go-to.
Yeah.
So after every Thanksgiving and Christmas, we'd whip out the Richard Simmons DVD, well, not DVDs, VHS, right back
Uh
in the day.
huh. Uh huh.
And so fitness was always reserved to sports or these like very occasional circumstantial times of year. And so I didn't have role models growing up of how to weave fitness into your everyday life.
Hmm.
And then I went into the nonprofit sector and came out of grad school and in seminary. And I started looking around, and all my peers were burning out their bodies slowly or quickly, depending, in service to other people, usually,
Hmm.
particularly women. And I watched my executive director of my nonprofit live off of Black coffee and toast. I watched pastors, slowly gain and lose. We were talking about your program at Infinite 30 of you gain and you lose the same 30 pounds over and over again. And so from my own life, I said, I have to find a different way or I will burn out too. And so I was sitting 9 months pregnant in my office. I was working at a full-time grant writer for a nonprofit in California, and we're about to move across the country to New York City. So we were transient, we were poor because we were in between jobs, we were young, and I was like, I can't afford gym memberships anymore, let alone even find a brick and mortar gym. I mean, we were going to be living between leases, living with my parents, traveling overseas. I had to find an option that I could do anywhere. So that's how, for me, I found Beachbody Workouts. That's the
Hmm.
particular partner that I work with because it was like having a gym in my pocket. And that's what I needed. And I ended up losing 20 pounds postpartum, not setting foot in a gym, working out in hotel rooms, in the backyard of my in law's house in London, in the drizzling rain, even. Overseas in South Africa with no internet access, I would download the workouts and do them while we were visiting family. And so I just started sharing very naturally on social media, and women started to reach out and say, like, Erin, this worked so well. Would it work for me too? And I said, of course, like, absolutely. It is a budget friendly, really convenient way, particularly for women and mothers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who
Mm-hmm.
have babies that need us. We can't, or we don't have childcare. We need to work out when the baby sleeps or before that first breastfeeding session. And that's how I started to lean into coaching.
So I love that the reality of the platform that those exercises are on, and like you said, how you can access them anytime. But one of the things that comes to my mind about exercise is how do you stay motivated when it's just you, or even the demands of your daily life to make that a priority?
Oh, such a good question. Because that is the secret sauce, right? The if I could, like, I don't have a tattoo, but if I got one, it would say, if you really want it, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I have to keep telling myself every day. Your why for showing up has to be more compelling than the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell my clients a lot, you need to measure your inputs, not your outputs. So many of us have a weight loss goal, but the problem is, like, for me, I had a weight loss goal. It started with financial reasons. Like, I honestly couldn't fit into my closet full of clothes anymore
Mm-hmm.
postpartum, and I couldn't afford to buy new ones. And I didn't have the time to go surfing through thrift stores with my infant. And so it was like, I have to fit back into these pair of jeans because this is my reality. And so for me, but then what happens when you achieve the goal? If your goal is simply a number on a scale, you will stop when you reach that goal. That's why the whole infinite 30 thing makes sense to me, because you're infinitely putting it back on so that you can reignite your why.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a deep enough why.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my deep, 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 deep why was, not only was I watching the women in my life burn out their bodies in their careers, many of them. So I'm an ordained United Methodist pastor. So a lot of my women were, my peers were working in ministry contexts, they're working in nonprofits. I also watched my own mother struggle with grief after losing my dad in a really traumatic, sudden motorcycle accident when I was 15. And over a decade, my mom gained about 120 pounds,
Mm.
which led to type 2 diabetes and double knee replacements, neck surgery, stroke level blood pressure. And just this past year, she started to have shortness of breath. And I remember I was standing outside our garage and I said, Mama, your hand, have you looked at it? And I held up my hand next to her, and hers was purple. And I said, Mama, this isn't normal. And she just kind of looked and said, huh, look at that. And just went on watering her roses. And I just feel like so many women do that, right? It's like, it's not immediate enough. We see these signs that our bodies are trying to send up flares. And literally about 2 months later, she went in for a heart catheterization to check on why she was having shortness of breath. She went into cardiac arrest. She flatlined 6 times, and unfortunately suffered universal brain damage. And we had to remove her from life support 3 days later. So for me, like, my why is, I have sat at the bedside of women who have paid the ultimate price for, I'll get to it one day. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, there's this deep sense of urgency that, like, I am getting up and I'm going to move my body. I'm not hitting snooze on this alarm at 5 a.m. I cannot afford to do tomorrow what my future self needs me to do today.
You've said it now a couple times about exercise and movement, and with Infinite 30, the initial phase, we want people's bodies to find balance and to heal. And so we don't push exercise at the beginning, especially if someone is not exercising, because that becomes overwhelming, that they're
Mm-hmm.
not only changing kind of the way they're eating and the process of that, but then you say, well, now you got to do this and this. So kind of move into that after that first 30 days. um, But one of the things that about exercise that we try to emphasize is exactly what you said, is that it should become part of who we are, not what we do. So speak to that a little more about how people might discover the value of that more than, oh, I better go do this, or I'm being bad. I think because I listened to some of my clients say that, well, I didn't exercise, so they're beating themselves up about it.
I think that for me, and this goes back to being a mom and the role models I didn't have growing up. I mean, my dad played basketball in college, and in high school. My mom did some like women's gyms and things, but fitness inside our home was never really a thing outside of these occasional Jane Fonda workouts. And so I wanted different for my daughter. I always say I want fitness to be as normal and routine to Ella, my 2-year-old, and this new one on the way, Nadia, as brushing their teeth. And it's funny because, being a fitness coach, some of my daughter's first words were, she calls it exercising. She says, "Mom, are you exercising?" And I say, "Yes, baby." And she'll say, "I do my push-ups." And she'll do, like a little baby yoga push-ups. It's just such a different way of life that she's going to grow up knowing
Mm-hmm.
that exercise is a part of who we are. And just like we might skip a day brushing our teeth, occasionally things happen, or we might not shower every day, we get back to it. We get back to these like rhythms of self care because they're non negotiables. They're just what we do. And we don't, it's just the same way if forget to brush your teeth in the morning. You're not like, oh, I'm just horrible. My dentist is going to kill me. You could really dwell and really go in a negative mind space about that. Or you could say, well, I'm going to pick up the toothbrush and do it right now. I'm going to do a little bit, or I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
do something, or I'm just going to get back at it tomorrow. And so balancing grace and discipline. That's what I work with my women all the time. And saying, it's not how fast you go, it's that you're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Direction is more important than speed or even consistency, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would
Mm-hmm.
much rather you continue to take steps forward, even if they're 2 weeks apart, than to just say, "Oh, I missed a day. I missed 2 days. I missed a week. You know what? This isn't for me. I knew it. I knew I'd fail." You just can't do that. Your body can't afford for you to give up on yourself.
And Van, that is such a big conversation we have with clients, not just on exercise, but just staying on the plan or
Oh,
staying
yeah.
in the game of losing weight, because uh, they came to us because they wanted something they didn't have, and they knew, I know for myself, it was, I needed some structure and accountability. I needed a plan. I needed someone, that I didn't just need to try to figure that out myself. And so we give them all of the tools they need, and yet we can't be with them 24/7. So the weekend rolls around, and they go to a gathering with friends, or they go out to dinner, so you just watch them fall into that, well, I did that, so now I've blown it all.
Right.
And
And it'll happen at the 3-week mark.
yes, yes.
It's always, and I tell my women, and those of you listening, I need you to hear me. At 3 weeks into a new routine, it's not going to be fun anymore.
Right.
It's not going to feel new. It's not going to feel shiny and sexy and like all rainbows and sunshine. So that's actually when you need to reach out to your coach. Because what I had an intake call just like 2 days ago with a pastor in Florida, and she said, "Erin, like, how can I be successful?" I said, 3 weeks in, when I email you and you don't answer me for a week, still respond to me, even if it's late. Don't go quiet on me.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
the struggle, is people feel shame
Yeah.
that they kick the can down the road. And I say, always re-engage. I would rather you re-engage and we'll pretend like nothing happened, right? We're just going to keep on running
Mm-hmm.
at that 3-week mark. And the other thing to keep in mind when you hit the 3-week mark is choose your hard. Going back to the beginning is just as hard as swallowing your pride and moving forward again, right?
Yeah.
Like, otherwise you're stuck in the infinite cycle, and it's just as hard as putting on your walking shoes or putting the Doritos down.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
You're just
uh-huh.
choosing a different hard.
There's something so interesting about the way we're knit together, in how we really do deal with that shame, or even the vulnerability to to express our fears, or um, our the way we feel defeated or whatever. So, you know, what if you had a coach that did re-engage and they just feel like they just have lost it all? This is not even, they can't even move forward. What would you say to them?
Hmm. I'd have to tap back into that why.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have to be a why that is greater than your status quo. And I've even recommended that women do work around visualization. So, like studies show that our neurons and our pathways respond to um, seeing the people that we love, the places that we love. And so, if I have a woman who, I think it was for her 25th anniversary, she like hiked this mountain with her husband. It was the fittest she had ever felt. And she had worked really, really hard to reach this goal. And she had gotten to the top of this mountain. And I said, I want you to print out a picture of you on that mountain. And I want you to put it on your wall where you work out in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
because you can get back there literally onto that mountain. And so or I've had people do pictures of their children, pictures of trips that they want to take, just something to trigger. Write down your why, put it somewhere you can see. I mean, I know it sounds corny. I talk a lot about personal development, but like I write down, I've got 5 goals that I'm working on. Every morning I wake up at 5 a.m. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for and 5 goals I'm working on
Mm-hmm.
every single day, because I want to train my subconscious that that's where I'm headed.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anybody can do that. It takes 10 minutes for
Yeah.
you to kind of sit, think, and visualize your future. And you will just be, I mean, everybody does this. Rob Lowe, Oprah. I mean, you just Google it
Yeah. Yeah.
and you'll be in like the top 5% of most successful people in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so funny how you're right. It's something so simple and it doesn't take a lot of time, but we won't give ourselves that time. We're
Exactly.
resistant to that, and um, or we allow everything else to take over. So I would think that would be something as a mom. And of course, you're getting ready to have 2 children, and all the challenges that can present. I have 2 daughters myself. They're not that young, but they were once. In fact, they're 2.5 years apart. And what's your message to those moms who just can't even see the end of the next minute?
Right. I think it's that you cannot care for others if you're not caring for yourself. You just will burn out.
Mhm.
I mean, when Ella was so small, I would have to wake up at 5:30 and hit play by 6 a.m. so that by the time she was up at 7 for her first feeding, I was ready. And sometimes I didn't finish my workout. Sometimes she would cry before, right? And I had to pause. But barely adequate, or what's this phrase that my therapist once told me? Good enough does not mean barely adequate, but fully sufficient.
Mm.
And I think the perfectionist in us as women, particularly as moms, we want to do everything all the time perfect. I mean, getting through 15 minutes of a 30-minute workout, having to press pause and change a diaper or do a breastfeeding session is better than no workout at all. At least you are putting yourself first. And there might be a season where you have to burn the candle at both ends,
Mhm.
where you are going to get less sleep in order to get a little bit of movement in. But again, you're choosing your heart. You
Mhm.
can choose sleep, or you can choose feeling sluggish and low energy because you haven't moved your body in a life-giving way in
Mhm.
3 weeks.
Mhm.
And so I would rather be slightly sleep deprived, but feel strong. Like literally my muscles feel strong. I'm not winded when I go up steps. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's time for sleep, but I rather feel less back pain when I carry my daughter. That was a big motivator for me. Like I couldn't carry her in the baby carrier without so much pain. So to me, I would rather be a little sleepy, wake up at 5:30 in the morning, do my exercises so that I could carry her through the day and not be in pain, right? I'm choosing my heart.
I think that goes back to the reality that when it comes to fitness and exercise or movement, it really is finding the things we love and, shifting that mindset around that it's about enjoying it. It's about something we are, not something we do. And that movement is only going to accentuate anything someone's done in our program to lose weight, because it's going to tone their body, it strengthen their body, and that's a lot of times when people are starting to ask me, okay, I need to figure out what it is I'm going to do to move, and I'll simply say, you want to strengthen who you are, so it's really from the inside out, instead of that, well, I just want to lose, the flab in my arms or tighten my thighs or whatever. I said all that's going to come, but I think for me, when I made the switch in my head that it's about what I'm strengthening inside, so that everything else on the outside works better. um,
Yes, so
and
that you can do
even
the things you
appears,
love.
yeah, right.
Yeah, easier so that you can twirl your kids easier, so you can
Hmm.
haul your groceries with less strain, right?
Right.
I'm very much about functional fitness. And I mean, my husband's the living proof of this. He lost, 40 pounds on Weight Watchers or something like that. But he said, I never felt so weak, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
because he didn't have any exercise component to accompany the weight loss. And what's impressive about Infinite 30 is that you guys focus on nutrition, because that is the hardest part.
Hmm.
And it is 80% of what weight loss is about.
Hmm.
20% is exercise. But really, I mean, and it's a struggle, especially in the Instagram space, because the body positive movement is so beautiful in so many ways.
Yep.
But where I do think it does a disservice sometimes is it doesn't acknowledge that we do have to enter a calorie deficit in order to lose weight. That
Hmm.
is sort of a mathematical, scientific body truth. And
Hmm.
so a lot of my women they'll actually do the opposite. They'll actually get into a really great fitness routine, but they will not change what they eat.
Yes,
So
yes,
3 months
yes.
later, they say, Erin, why am I not seeing results? And so for me, I like to do both, because I'm sort of like well, we're getting new routines. Let's just build them all
Hmm.
together. But
Hmm.
I think your model of, if you can tackle nutrition in 30 days and get that solid, you have such a good foundation
Oh
to
yeah.
build the exercise. And I will say, you mentioned you have to find something you love. I don't love exercising. And I think that's
Hmm.
important for women to hear, because they're
Hmm.
like, oh, Erin, you only can do this because you love it. That's the reason you're different than me. And I'm like, do you love brushing your teeth? No. Like, no one's like,
Right.
I just can't wait to do it again. It's like, no, it's hard, it's painful, but it's just a part of who I am. It's a non negotiable. I'm choosing my heart.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and what I love is the way I feel.
Yes, exactly.
And I love the energy I have. I love the stamina, all of those things. And I know that that only comes from putting valuable foods
Nourishing our body,
in
right?
me and then moving my body in a way that strengthens me.
Yes.
And
Amen.
and that's the thing about this program. It's really it's all real food. It's not there's not any you know tricks of other
Magic
additional,
pills.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's and which is quite fascinating the more I work with people. um and I think a sad point of reality in our world is the lack of knowledge we have on high nutrient dense foods,
Mm,
and then how the foods we eat, even whole healthy foods, how they can affect us negatively, because we all are created differently, and some of us can you know eat dairy and some of us cannot. It doesn't make
mhm,
dairy bad. It's just we have to learn how that our body works with that. And for Infinite 30, that's what becomes infinitely possible for you to maintain the weight you lost, is that you then have the
mhm.
tools to understand your body and how it works. And I think the same happens too when we exercise. And when we move and when we do things that are beyond ourselves, we then understand and learn ourselves in a whole greater capacity,
Mhm.
which then becomes sustainable and lasting.
Exactly.
So, what is your last words of wisdom? You're full of great wisdom you would have to say to somebody who might be listening to this and maybe they're struggling. Maybe they've found, maybe they've had some success, but yet they kind of got that next little, thing to hurdle to go over. Um, what would you say to that person?
I would say that mornings are magical, and how you start your day determines a lot of how you'll live your life, actually. Do you wake up frantic? Well, because you haven't planned enough time and the kids are already up, you've got to get breakfast on the table. Is it a scramble in your morning? Are you hitting snooze a lot, right? You're kicking the can down the road. Every day you start with the mentality that you're going to kick a can down the road by hitting that snooze button. Or is there a universe in which you can wake up when you choose, not when you need, which might
Mm.
mean an hour early, so that you start your day from a place of strength and choice and purposefulness? Um, I just think so I did some research about like people who, well, one, who are A, just successful in their careers in life and parenting, and B, exercise consistently over a lifetime, maintain their weight, right? And 80% of them exercise in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's hormone reasons for that, right? The longer you go in your day, the more your brain is going to release hormones that are going to prepare you for sleep. You're going to be less energized, more fatigued, all these things. And then, of course, the practical things of life hasn't gotten in your way yet.
Yep.
And so, if you want to change your world, I would recommend reading books like Miracle Morning or The 5 a.m. Club. I mean, these are building a morning routine that can involve some visualizations. Writing down your goals, your gratitude, moving your body can be game changing for people everywhere. And it's really transformed my life. So rock your morning, rock your life.
I'd like to wrap up this episode with a mindful moment to reflect on what we've discussed today. Erin talks a lot about creating a routine. One of the things that she said that I think is worthy of repeating, and I think she even says it more than once, is if you really want it, you will find a way. If you don't, you will find an excuse. Now, let's think for a minute about those morning routines. As a part of the Infinite 30 program, we often drive home the practice of what happens every morning when we get up, and how that we get up in the morning, we go to the bathroom, we weigh, we record our weight, and we text our coach. That's in our success manual. And it's something that all of our coaches work to help people get into that practice every day. There's other practices that we have every day as well, but the morning routine is so important because I believe it is really what sets the tone of our day. So, in the course of my life, there have been times when I have been much better at a morning routine than I have other times. But when I can focus in on carving out the intentional time that I need every morning to spend quiet time in my devotions and in my reflection, as well as balancing that with exercise and preparing myself for the day, the better my life seems to work and the better I feel balanced in all that I do. So, the goal then that we should be striving for when we think about how we embrace this overall health and wellness journey that we're on is how can we make those morning routines valuable every day? Now, as Erin said in our conversation, she also talked about balancing grace and discipline. And some days we're not going to be perfect at it, but that doesn't mean we throw it all out. It just means that we get back in and we keep trying. We keep practicing. And it is a practice. It really is a practice. So one of the best ways I know to get into that routine and to begin to almost manifest the time that we're going to spend every morning on ourselves is to have what we could call a mental rehearsal. So every night before you go to bed, maybe you just spend time in thinking about what's going to happen from the moment the alarm goes off until you walk out the door to either go to work or take your kids to school or whatever, however your day unfolds. So for me, part of that mental rehearsal is I have to just kind of go through what those movements are. So I'm going to wake up in the morning. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to weigh. I'm going to record that weight. I'm going to, evaluate even what that weight says to me now as I move in living into some maintenance of my weight loss. I'm going to go into my kitchen. I'm going to get some water. I have some medication that I take. I do that. And then I come back to that space in my home that I've created for my quiet time, where I will spend time in my daily devotion. I will spend time writing or journaling or making some notes around that. I will focus in on what are some good things that I can do during the day to express acts of kindness or gratitude toward people. And then I usually will spend some time thinking about how does what I've read that morning, either through scripture or the devotional that I chose, how is that helping me build my life? And so usually I'll write down a couple, 3 sentences, maybe even that are really about me working on how I want to build my life. And then about 3 days a week, I will incorporate exercise into that daily routine. And so sometimes that means I will go to a workout class. Other times that means I will just simply put on my tennis shoes and go for a walk in my neighborhood. And then when I come home, I will have my breakfast and I will shower and get dressed for the day. And then I'm fully prepared to face what comes on for me the rest of the day. So, however, you need to mental rehearse that every day, you can decide that for yourself. But I think the more we mental rehearse how we're going to use the time we have every morning, the more and more it becomes a habit for us. It becomes a part of that routine, just like taking a shower, brushing our teeth, and putting our clothes on every day is a routine and a habit for us. So I hope that you'll spend some time reflecting on the things that Erin shared, as well as considering what your morning routine looks like. And maybe, just maybe, your morning routine isn't a morning routine, but maybe it is just a routine for your self-care, for your personal time, at any time during the day. Of the 24 hours we're given every day, how do you use at least part of that to care for yourself so that you can be the very best you that you are, and how you can use all the good that you have in your life to offer that in the best way possible. So I encourage you to consider how you might mental rehearse those routines for yourself. And remember that little quote that I said that Erin shared with us is, if you really want it, you will find a way. And if you don't, you will find some excuses. So I hope today that you will set out on the journey to find a way and allow those excuses to become less and less in your daily routine. Today's episode was edited and produced by Carson Roach Howell, Hope Bennett, and Bob Beatty. Our executive producer is Georgia Goppert. I'm Dee Dee Autry, and you can reach me at covenantcoachingandwellness.com. I'd love to hear from you and get your comments about our show. Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform it is that you use. And if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review, or even better, pass it along to a friend. You can also join my community on Patreon to receive exclusive newsletters, participate in Patreon-only Q&As, and receive a monthly one-on-one coaching call. So until next time, I hope you experience a life with infinite possibilities.